Hello, welcome to the Courtney Turner podcast. I am here today with Jamie Hanshaw and Jay Dyer. We are going to talk about the dark side of Disney. I know a lot of people say like how Disney would be rolling in its grave with all the wokeism, but it seems like there's a past that may make some sense when you know a little more of the history around Disney. And this is actually a topic I don't know very much about, but these two do. Jamie's done tremendous, extensive research on the topic, so I'm excited to learn from these guys today. How are you both doing tonight?
Very good.
I'm great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. So maybe I want to start with a little, I always like to get a little of the backstory of why people are, do the kind of research that they do. I think it helps people to understand kind of, I think to accept the information really when they have a sense of how they got there. So what made you start diving into Disney? What was the... You want to go first?
This is your forte. You go first.
Diving into Disney. Well, I guess growing up in a sort of strict fundamental household, there was always that knowledge that Disney did have a side that promoted magic to children. Mm-hmm. And so however you feel about that, it goes right into witchcraft and witches, and now we're seeing them bring in some villains as heroes like Maleficent and Cruella. Mm-hmm. So there is definitely an agenda to get children interested in magic and witchcraft and the occult, and then it just blossomed maybe after year 2000. Mm-hmm. They really put it into overdrive with the woke stuff, with the alphabet people's stuff, the animism, the paganism. What else?
Skittles.
Yeah. So then, if you get into the life of Walt Disney himself, it becomes very interesting, and you realize that the largest multimedia conglomerate in the world, does have ties to the military-industrial complex. Mm-hmm. It has ties to mind control, MK Ultra, Artichoke, Monarch programs, CIA, FBI, UFOs, you name it, Nazis, all of it.
Right, and Masons, right? I remember that Club 33. That one I did remember.
That is something that everybody uses as evidence that Walt was a Mason, but I've read several biographies and I can tell you 100% he was not a Freemason, but he was one of the first members of DeMolay, which is a Masonic club for boys. So, Roy Disney was a Mason. Walt was not a Freemason, but he was DeMolay, and they are very sympathetic to Masons. And actually on my book there is this picture of this little crate, and this is a picture that we took, I don't know where the camera is.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Thunder Mountain Railroad. So you know how they have props and it looks like the gold rush and everything on Thunder Mountain Railroad. You have to look really closely or you miss it. It says H. Abiff's working tools.
Oh yeah.
Do you see that?
I do.
And you got a compass and plumb and the scraper, I don't remember what it's called, but these working tools of the Master Masons. So they do have little Easter eggs hidden in Disneyland of Masonic symbolism.
So what is it, the Mason for the boys that this DeMolay?
It's called DeMolay. It was named after Jacques DeMolay, who was burned at the stake in the medieval times.
The Templars, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so what is their affiliation with the Masons? How would they...
Well, Masons have a lot of appendage bodies. They have Eastern Star for women, they have Rainbow Girls, they have Job's Daughters for girls, and they have DeMolay for boys. So this is just what gets you prepared to become a Mason in the future.
Oh.
Or if you're a Freemason, you have children, you want them to be brought up in this, and you enroll them in these other appendage groups.
It's like the grooming ground.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. I got it. Okay. Well, I just know, as a kid, I always found all of these, fairy tales that were supposed to be, very lighthearted. This is what we're told, right? And a lot of them gave me nightmares.
Yeah.
Right? So are there intentionally a lot of dark hidden messages in these films? I mean, now, as you said, it's become much more overt.
Yeah.
But in the, the old school ones, were they also intending to subliminally plant some darker messages?
I would say yes. Yes. I brought here in this, the Trapper Keeper of Horrors, all my Disney notes.
Trapper Keeper. I haven't seen one of those.
She bought one that looks like it's from the 90s, too.
It totally does.
And here's this article called How to Brainwash Your Friends and Family. So this is something that they developed with the MP Ultra Monarch program to have kids sit down on LSD and watch Fantasia. And it tells you line by line what the programmer will say at what time in the movie, and this helps facilitate the programming and get them prepared for the fantasy world that their psyche is going to be.
Wow. So what is it that they're hoping to, what messaging are they hoping to instill?
It just depends on the particular person, what they're being groomed for. They could be for espionage, they could be a courier, they could be, a
Sex kitten.
beta programming.
So they're just using the movie as a,
Template.
Yeah,
Okay.
and as a script to set up their inner psyche, to put the different alters and personalities in. So when they do this, they have like this framework. They can be a carousel, it can be a house, it could be something like that, but with different rooms and your different levels, and so the different alter personalities live inside these compact apartments in your mind.
wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, how successful they were, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's and a lot of the psychiatrists and theorists who talk about MPDDID, they'll
Mhm.
talk about dealing with people that have these kinds of phenomena. But I mean, I'm just saying, I've read a lot of M Culture, but I don't know how successful they were in programming people with the retrieval powers of these different triggers and alters. But I think they definitely did it.
Yeah, well, it's, so I'm still a little confused. So they're using this as like to create the triggers, is that essentially what it is? So they're
The trauma
programming them?
creates the disassociation,
Right.
and when they're in that state, they're more suggestible to things.
Right.
And so in this way, you can turn a person into a robotic
Mm-hmm.
being, like a Manchurian candidate.
Right.
And Disney fantasy is the perfect framework to do this to children.
Okay.
And also, the programmer can be dressed up like Mickey Mouse or
Mhm.
the evil witch or whatever. And so
Right.
when the child tries to testify, like, I was abused by Goofy or something, it sounds crazy.
Right. So this is a way of they traumatize them, they program them, but in a framework that discredits them if they were to
Right.
talk about it.
And I think even Michael Aquino, one of his programming names was Mickey Mouse.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's Paul Bonacci, I think, claimed that Aquino was involved in this Monarch.
Wow. So what, can you talk a little bit, let's start with his history. So he
Okay.
grew up in, yeah.
So he is a pretty enigmatic character.
Mhm.
He's known as, Uncle Walt, like America's guy who just likes children and wants to make a fantasy land and who's young at heart or whatever.
Right.
But
It's the most magical place on earth. This is what I hear from people.
yeah. And we recorded a show last night talking about how the Magic Kingdom has almost replaced Christ's Kingdom, really, and they, go there for their special events, for their weddings, for their milestones, and in this way, Disney has replaced the church as some kind of religious center.
Right.
But in my first book, I have a chapter all about Walt Disney himself, because like you said, we were talking before, what would Walt think of all of this
Right.
wokeness, right? So he was born like right at the turn of the century, and his parentage is kind of disputed. So, and this is something that the government used later on to, like, not blackmail him, but get him to work with them, because they promised him that they would help him find his real mother if he became a special agent in the FBI and things like that. So his father was very abusive. He really looked up to his brother. He was worked to death as a child, really. He just had to, like, take cat naps in alleys and things like that where he could.
Wow.
His dad was a boozer and a womanizer and a cad.
Right.
So he grew up in like Kansas City in that area, and well, I actually have a picture of his house right here. He recreated the barn from his home in California, and this was like his happy place. So when he grew up, he tried to run away from home by joining the army, but he was 1 year too young.
I'll put the picture up for the camera so you can see it.
Disney.
There we go. Yeah, there you can see it.
So he joined the Red Cross, and he kind of fudged his birth certificate to get into World War I. And there he was a chauffeur for officers and things, and he would go around collecting relics from the battlefield and kind of jazz them up, make them look more war-torn, and then sell them as souvenirs.
Wow.
So he was really into cartoons. He was into art, animation. He, when he got out is when they started to, relocate to California. We don't have to get into all of his early life, but I just wanted to say that the question about his parentage really bugged him, and then he was the one that the B'nai B'rith wanted to give Hollywood a better look because it was starting to look very degenerate and seedy, and they were blaming Hollywood on the problems of the country in like the Great Depression. So they're like, we need Disney to bring wholesome family values to Hollywood. So you're our man who's going to be like the face of the new Hollywood.
And this was B'nai B'rith that was saying this? So I recently read this, that B'nai B'rith was a arm of British intelligence.
It's like what would you call it?
I mean, it's, explicitly Jewish Freemasonry.
Yes.
So,
Right, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that they had connection. I know I'm familiar with the EIR, with the Executive Intelligence Report that you're talking about.
Okay.
And yeah, I think they've always kind of had a connection there. That's because British organized crime also ties into that, because British intelligence basically has their fingers everywhere.
Right,
So
right.
they're involved in all these things.
So do you think they were actually, I know they say it's like Jewish Freemasonry, but do you think they were actually Jews, or it was just like this arm
I think so.
of, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was his mission, really, to bring family values back to Hollywood, and that's why the studio was so strict back in the day. Like you've heard that men couldn't have mustaches and all of that.
Right.
So they were trying to make everything very above board, and they also recruited him to assist in the crusade against the spread of communism in Hollywood back in the day.
During the McCarthy era, was it?
This was in like the 30s.
Okay.
So prior to McCarthy.
Okay.
And then in World War II era is when they really ramped it up. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, back to Walt's character for a second. He actually went to Bohemian Grove in 1936.
Wow.
So there's something for your listeners to look into.
Yeah.
What else? He had a lot of anxiety. He chain smoked a lot because people, when they're psychoanalyzing him, they're like, he was under tremendous amounts of pressure from all of the government agencies that wanted to work with him. He never emerged from the studio underground until late afternoon, so he was like always in the tunnels. In 1945, he had a nervous breakdown and spent all of his time in his private inner office, which they jokingly called Walt's Chamber of Horrors.
And why did they call it that? What did you mean by that?
Nobody knows.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just the joke around the studio. He was obsessed with his model choo-choo train. So you're seeing the decline of this person through working with all of these other groups like Stanford Research Institute, CIA, FBI, Pentagon, friends with Werner von Braun. I have a picture of him and Werner von Braun shaking hands, the famous Nazi rocket scientist.
Yeah.
Right?
So do you think that he was an asset of sorts, or do you think that...
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
He became a special agent in charge, and here's his redacted, papers from that whole escapade, because they told him that if you work with us, we'll never let it out that your mom might not be your mom, and we will help you try and find your real mom.
Wow. So, my curiosity, I'm just wondering how much, and I don't know if you know, but, like, did they kind of select him, like, at what point? Because I know, I'm thinking of, like, Project Monarch, where they tried this intergenerational trauma as a huge part of, so they intentionally will traumatize.
So Monarch was part of the thing that came over with Project Paperclip.
Right.
And all of those experiments that they were doing in World War II.
Mhm.
And so this was part of the package that was integrated into the studio, because in 1941, like right after Pearl Harbor, is when they commandeered Walt's studio in Burbank. So they literally rolled up their Jeeps to the studio and they're like, we are taking over here, and 90% of your production is going into the propaganda films and military training cartoons.
Wow. Okay.
Have you seen any of those?
No.
They're wild. Yeah. You
Are
should
they?
see 'em. They're on YouTube. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, you can look on YouTube, and then there's this whole special DVD collection you can get called Walt Disney on the Front Lines, and it talks about all of the different training videos, like serious things about venereal disease and
This is like for the
psychological
troops,
warfare.
right?
Yeah, so they were making Disney cartoons for the troops to watch in their army training.
Wow.
One was called like Army Psychotherapy, about stress, adrenal glands, and the basics of fear and how to instill it.
Wow.
You've heard of Chicken Little, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so this is a psychological cartoon, and it's about using psychology to create false narratives and false flags to undermine the faith of the masses in their leaders and scare them into following he's a sly fox in the cartoon. But very serious, edgy topics for the day.
Yeah. You can see the Walt Disney World War II cartoons that they would make. And there's tons of these. There's like ones about paying your taxes. There's ones about.
Oh, that's like, we went to, where was it? And the We the People, which is, I guess, like a branch of Netflix, I think. And it was, where was it? I want to say, was it Crystal Bridges? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and they had this whole, it was catering to the kids, and it was all about why you have to pay your taxes, and this is, what makes you a good American is paying your taxes.
There's Donald getting drafted, right?
Wow.
There's Commando Doc.
Here
So
on the
there's a
cover,
bunch of these.
here you can see Donald reading Mein Kampf. So there was several cartoons lampooning Hitler and his, ethos and regime. You have Donald and Mickey being the American cadets, soldiers. Here's, World of Warcraft is a chapter in my first book about all of these cartoons that, back in the day, like in the 30s and 40s, federal income tax wasn't as popular as it is now, because you don't have to pay it constitutionally.
Right.
So people weren't doing that, so they decided, like, how do we get people on board with this? So they made this cartoon called The New Spirit, where Donald Duck is billing out his income taxes. Here he is right here, and they show you the whole thing, like how to do your taxes, and Minnie saves her bacon grease for ammunition, and Donald does his taxes on time. So this is literally how they got people to start paying federal income tax to Donald Duck.
Wow. Yeah, and now it's just people think that you have to pay federal taxes. They think that this is, they think it's a law, which is not correct.
Right. So here's another picture. There's Disney and Werner von Braun right there. The
But if you don't,
famous
they'll
Nazi
put you in
scientist.
jail. So you do have to pay 'em.
Right.
But not legally. But you do.
right,
They won't
yeah.
tell you how much you owe, and if you get it wrong, then you're in trouble. So
Yeah.
it's just so crazy. There's
Well, and they also have the Project Adrian, where they're like teaching accounting students how to be armed.
Oh,
and
yeah.
right.
Oh,
All
yeah.
the new recruits.
Because
for the
that's
guards.
because accountants need to learn how. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
there was another cartoon called Education for Death: The Making of a Nazi, and this details the life of a Nazi youth and the psychological conditioning that makes a trained killer.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of the interesting points in that little cartoon was that the
This is geared towards kids. Again, I just want to clarify.
I mean,
It's a cartoon because kids should absolutely know why.
But it's also propaganda just for
Right.
anybody, like for the soldiers too, right?
yeah,
Right.
and
But I mean, I just want to point out it's a little bizarre. I mean,
For
if
kids,
you were a
yeah.
parent, would you want your child watching the psychological makeup of what makes a killer? I mean,
no, it's so crazy. So they have the cartoon, and it's this little boy named Hans who's just like this little, innocent German boy, and then the Nazis come for him and make him a Nazi youth, and they show him being ripped from his mother's bosom, basically, to thrown into the Hitler machine. And they're absolutely correct. Like, this is how you make psychos, is you take them out of their home when they're too young, and then you put them in an institution, and you've got them serving you for life.
right.
And this is all in Disney cartoons.
Wow. Crazy. So he was very traumatized. They were capitalizing on that in order to use him as an asset to serve their means. What would you say about, you were talking about how it's kind of replaced the church in a sense. It's become like a religious kind of mecca, obviously not a Christian mecca, but what do you think his religious beliefs, or were there any that when he was growing up?
Just of all the biographies I read, I don't think he was a very religious person.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
No, I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But so after World War II is when they started to put their energy more into the theme parks, Disneyland.
Right.
So when Disneyland? Okay, who built Disneyland? You know about Stanford Research Institute.
Yes.
Mind Control, SRI, and those doctors there. So
Yes. And they work under Tavistock.
Yes,
Yes.
and they were partnered with Walt Disney to find the spot of most magnetic forces in Southern California. So they actually worked with Stanford Research Institute to map out all the ley lines and find out where the ley lines cross, and that's where they put Disneyland.
That's just crazy. I've heard you say this. So what were they hoping in putting, wherever these
To
magnetic
draw people
forces
there
are?
Well, yeah, and they're all wrapped up in mystical military things. So
Right.
you've got not Eyes Wide Shut. What is that one? The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah. First Earth Battalion.
Esalen Institute, First Earth Battalion. So this is where the military in California is doing. They're studying woo-woo stuff, magic.
Are you familiar with that at all? The First Earth Battalion and Men Who Stare at Goats?
No.
You should watch that movie. They
Okay.
made it. It's a real group of special ops guys that were studying the occult and mind powers and all this kind of stuff. And George Clooney in the movie plays that main character.
Okay.
But it's all based on a real program, and that's part of SRI, but it's also a kind of an adjunct of Team
Wow. Okay.
So-
yeah, I'll check that out.
Interested in Disneyland, California, all the branches of the military, the Office of Naval Research, and DARPA, they all concluded that the best location of the park was in Anaheim, and then a professor at SRI, C.D. Wood, left there to become Disneyland's main engineer and more. And he is the one who introduced Walt to sponsors like Monsanto and GE. So I don't think that you're understanding what you're doing when you're going into a theme park. This is just a giant 3D commercial
Right.
for military industrial complex.
Right.
And so Tomorrowland, the first Tomorrowland was sponsored by Monsanto, and then you could have your tour of your plastic house, Jetson's house, with your refrigerator and then your storage for your irradiated foods. And I mean, this is the atomic age, right? So they're
Right.
talking like futuristic stuff, nuclear power, and the lovely world of plastics, which we're dealing with right now.
Oh yeah, which is creating the estrogenation.
Yes, and the GMOs and everything. So this is one of Disney's first partners, Monsanto, and then GE. So they figured out that the latitude 33, which Disneyland sits on, is famous for other strange events, such as Roswell and the Kennedy assassination. So that's a weird place.
Where did the name like Club 33? What was the 33 significance? Was it the ley line or?
It could be that, or it could be 33 Mason.
It could be.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I think that's what most people assume
Yeah.
that it was. Yeah.
So the same people who invented GPS and weather radar and all of this high technology electromagnetic properties, they are also have a hand in creating Disneyland. So they use their knowledge of ley lines to build the park on the intersecting lines, and they
Right.
actually put the King Arthur's carousel in intersection so that the energy continually spin.
And what were they hoping with that?
They're woo-woo engineers. I mean,
Right.
you have to think like a magician. You can't
Right.
just think about mundane, technical engineering stuff. You have to have a magic brain too, right?
Yeah, I guess so. So what was the purpose of creating did they have different intentions in creating Disney World? I've actually never been to Disney World, but I had always wanted to see Epcot. But yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to
so
Disneyland.
Disney World in Florida was built in partnership with the CIA.
Okay.
Okay, so Disneyland, SRI, DARPA, those people, Disney World, straight from the CIA. So in the 1960s, Disney operatives engaged in this far-ranging conspiracy to make sure sellers had no idea who was buying their Central Florida property because they didn't want to pay extra taxes, they didn't want to raise property values and stuff. They wanted to do all of this in secret and keep everything as secret as possible because, in my opinion, I think that's a center for, I don't know if I could say, TRAFF,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So Disney's key contact in the CIA was named William Wild Bill Donovan, and if you've ever heard anything about the CIA, you'll know about this guy. So he was known as like the father of the CIA. He provided fake identities for Disney's agents to buy property and set up secret communications center and a disinfo campaign to maintain control over the development. So these are people that are like coming from launching secret CIA wars in Indochina and Cuba and other psyops against Castro, and then they get done with that and they go work for Disney World.
Right.
Right.
So not for, creating a happy land for children.
No. These are not child-friendly people. These are serious spies and geopolitical, movers and shakers.
And a lot of Fortune 100, some of the biggest corporations have special contracts with Disney for certain rides, for certain propaganda. For example, there's a whole Monsanto ride that promotes GMO that we saw at Epcot.
Right.
Siemens Corporation is, I think, who sponsored the Epcot. So some of the biggest corporations in the world are part of this as well. It's not just a government thing.
Right, and of course Disney's like a parent company to much of Hollywood as well.
Yeah,
Right, and then big stockholders in Disney are also BlackRock and Vanguard.
Yeah.
Those guys. So
Yeah.
people who are doing secret geopolitical things, they want to set up Disney World to avoid taxation, environmental regulations, and immunity from the Constitution. And so this is a classic CIA strategy in foreign countries where they set up a puppet government and then use the regime to do their bidding, like we see in Ukraine and lots of other places.
And Disneyland, the one in Florida at least, has its own constitution, its own laws, its own police force.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they actually created two.
Yeah, there's
It's like a city-state, like
yeah.
the Vatican or
Yes.
whatever.
It is.
Yeah.
No, it really is. Like it's like a little bubble.
And DeSantis is trying to kind of take that down
It's
right
going
now.
to war. They're going to have an actual war. Like Pirates of the Caribbean will be. Jack Sparrow will be coming and trying to fight.
Yeah. So they created these cities that were basically just Disneyland employees,
Okay.
right? And loyalists who were elected officials and under the control of Disney executives.
Okay.
So the Magic Kingdom is Bay Lake, Florida, and the city of Lake Buena Vista. And so these parks reshaped Central Florida, and then Walt gave the opening speech to these from Beyond the Grave. So he had this dream of Epcot, which stands for Experimental Prototype Civilization or Community Tomorrow. And these are the prototype for the new 15-minute cities.
That's what it feels like.
I did a video breaking down the old '70s movie Logan's Run.
Okay.
In that video, I tied it into these types of 50-minute cities and smart cities that are coming. And I also went into a lot of depth in terms of how Epcot is the city of tomorrow. That when you go to the ride and you go through the propaganda of the whole era, they're telling you this is the future. This is the it's a smart city bubble that you never leave. So
Right.
they tell you that in all the propaganda in the ride.
They let you know.
It was
Okay.
designed to propagandize us for the world that we're going to now.
And just think about rides like Small World. It's a Small World. That's
Oh, yeah.
sponsored by UNESCO,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
who is on the forefront of the
Yeah.
Scabs.
And the eugenics movements
And you go to UNESCO's homepage a couple months ago, I did, and it said "No Child Left Behind" or something to that effect. And I read it two ways, like no children left.
right.
Period.
Wow.
So
This is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm curious because you said how most of the stockholders are Vanguard and BlackRock, and we know they're kind of buying up everything. But what they seem to be doing is leading the New World Order, right? They're on the board of the World Economic Forum. So
They're
what do you-
behind the ESG move.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So, what do you think what do you think that why? I guess is I mean,
No, total control. I mean, the ESG and all that's really the way
Sure.
to. I know
Yeah.
to bring the corporations under this overall Great Reset technological or technocratic agenda.
right. But I'm curious, like, why are they? What do they think they're going to lead it? Do they? Why are they involved in this? Like, why are they advancing this?
Why is BlackRock and Vanguard
Yeah.
advancing it? Because they were, I don't know their whole history, but I watched one good documentary on it. I mean, they were probably established for this kind of a purpose. So
That's kind of what I was wondering. Yeah, if they've been appointed, and that's why they have the leverage to be able to do this in the first place. They kind of came out of nowhere.
right.
You know, in the 90s.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and I feel like the more I dive into this stuff, I feel like the one thing you learn is that nothing actually organically just comes. If they catapult that quickly, then they probably had
or
some.
if it was organic, it's like immediately co-opted.
Right.
Very quickly.
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So sorry. Yeah. So this was around World War II where
Yeah.
a lot of this was going on.
Yeah.
And there was a propaganda around the war. So after that, where did they go?
So let's see. Disney World was 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a lot of Cold War anti-communist?
Yes.
Or just anti-Nazi?
No, anti-communism was earlier than that when he was on the committee.
Well, I'm not asking about the Cold War, though. I'm saying during the
Oh.
Cold War, what was Disney pushing anti-communist stuff?
Not that I can think of. But then the ex-president Michael Ovitz, he said that Disney isn't a company as much as it is a nation-state like the Vatican or District of
That's what I
Columbia.
was saying.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you have Operation Mockingbird was designed to manipulate news media for propaganda, and they spent millions per year hiring journalists from Disney and ABC
Mm-hmm.
to promote their point of view. And then they recently obtained files through the FOIA that the Department of Defense and CIA backed and influenced hundreds of movies and TV shows owned by the Walt Disney Company. So your original Mickey Mouse Club,
Mm-hmm.
part of their programming was to go visit the FBI office or the Pentagon or whatever. Like they would take the Mouseketeers, and they had several episodes where it's like, this is about the FBI or the Air Force or whatever. So
Wow.
are involved in this. Yeah. Disney's special effects wizard named Robert Cary Broughton created award-winning films for both Disney and the OSS, and the OSS is what became the CIA.
Right. Sure.
So, I mean, you have so many people working in the same departments going to work for Disney. It just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. I'm also thinking like so many of these like Mouseketeers, they all had these breakdowns so that are very reminiscent of people who've been MK Ultra'd or right.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we think was going on there? Do you think that they were being traumatized? Do you think they were being
Yes.
programmed?
Well, definitely. I mean, Britney Spears, she's one of our archetypes of this, what do you call it, thesis that we have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't prove it. We're just
Right.
two people, but yeah, following the threads, it's like Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, like anybody who was a big Disney
Demi
star.
Lovato.
Mm-hmm.
They have these breakdowns.
Yeah, Miley Cyrus.
Miley,
Yes.
Taylor
Amanda Bynes.
Amanda Bynes, right? Taylor Swift. She wasn't at Disney, but she was. I think she was kind of in that similar.
Miley was one of the first ones to make me like really deep dive into Disney because we were really getting into conspiracy theories in like 2007, 2008, and that's when Hannah Montana was like at the peak.
Right.
And you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Hannah Montana. I mean, I did a dumb little YouTube video where we got a cart and we went through the store like it was Target or Walmart or something, and I said, how long can we walk through this store before and grab every Hannah Montana product? Like, how long will it be before the cart is full? You know, could we fill a cart with just Hannah Montana? From
Yeah,
the store, right? And we didn't even make it 3 or 4 aisles because there was a Hannah Montana everything. Anything that a little girl could ever want in her whole life had Hannah Montana's face on it. So I'm like, look at the power of this marketing. Just this one aspect of it. Like, you cannot live your life without seeing Miley Cyrus's face ever, even in the hardware store. I'm like, surely there will not be a Hannah Montana product at Home Depot. And I walk past the keys, you know, where you make your own keys.
Yeah.
And there's a Hannah Montana key that you can. I was like, no way. So we go to AutoZone, and I'm like, surely
there's no Hannah Montana here.
But there's Hannah Montana air freshener or whatever, and I was just like, this is crazy, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think that the programming around that was? What are they?
It's just.
Well, she's a character who's a dual personality.
Yeah,
So-
that's right. Yeah.
But with Miley herself, she goes from being, the
Yeah.
sweet innocent girl to, the sex symbol.
I remember this when I was young. So it was way before Hannah Montana. But there was a book. It was called Lisa Bright and Dark, and I feel like it was very much like predictive programming for bipolar personality. It reminded me a lot of later. It wasn't much later, but Prozac Nation came out, right? And that was definitely kind of grooming for, the acceptability of like everybody's just on these SSRIs because
Yeah, exactly.
totally normalizing it. Yeah. So that's interesting to think about. So I wonder I always wonder if when they're trying to, I guess, like you said, it's a bipolar personality. When they're trying to normalize these conditions, that because they've created so many of these, that they want to kind of mask it.
I think that is
They want to drug it too, like you're saying.
what X-Men is about. Like,
New Mutants.
yes. They're gonna say that this ability of dissociation is some kind of superpower because you can be more than one person.
Well, they're doing that too with autism. They're saying that, right, that's the Ben Affleck movie with the accountant where he's a perfect, CIA assassin in film because he's autistic and he doesn't have emotional compunction about who he kills. And so the film is actually making him into a superhero. And it ends with the idea that, if you're autistic, you have a superpower, which it's a problem. It's not,
Right. It's not a superpower.
But they did the same thing in the movie The New Mutants, like Jamie's saying. The Anya Taylor-Joy character she has been abused as a child, and she dissociates and draws her power from her. Literally, is a multiple personality, mind-controlled, sex kitten killer, and she draws the power from her dissociative states.
Wow. I also think that with the autism one, I mean, we know now they keep saying how there's going to be 1 out of every 2 children born is going to be autistic. I always wonder, though, if it's not just to, elevate that and make that, that's what that was doing. But I also wonder if it's to kind of set the stage for transhumanism. Because, because the autistic are not socially related in the same kind of a way.
Yeah, they're more machine-like.
Yes.
And that's exactly right.
Who was always on the forefront of animatronic people? Walt Disney.
Oh.
Remember the Hall of Presidents and all of that? So that whole technology was something that Disney was very interested in. Synthetic people.
Synthetic people. Wow. So, I know you said you don't think that he was Mason, but he was part of this, I forgot the name of it.
Demolay?
Demolay. Okay, so he was exposed to that as a child.
Yeah.
He was exposed to this worldview.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I know you said you didn't think he was religious, but I would argue that that is kind of a religion, right? Aren't they taught very much like or do you not think they have?
Freemasonry is not technically a religion. You can be any religion and still be a Mason.
Mm-hmm.
But
don't
it
they
is
teach
Gnostic
you?
at its
Right,
core.
right.
Yeah.
So what would you say some of the, like, precepts or notions that they guide you towards?
That mankind, what they think is in a state of what they call a rough ashlar, and that they need Freemasonry to perfect man and make him into a smooth ashlar, which is some kind a cube,
Okay.
right? And only through Masonry do you chip off your rough edges and become this godlike man.
Right, like a...
But it's ultimately atheistic and sort of Luciferian, right?
right, I would say
there's
not
God.
atheist. I would say Luciferian, right? Don't they?
It's
I
just a
wouldn't you think
higher
they're the
power
same?
architect
Right.
that you
Well,
have.
atheistic in that there's no higher power God. You're your own God.
You're your own God,
Becoming
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking you all know Harari's book, Homo Deus, is man God,
Man God,
right?
yeah.
So it seems to be that this is the view. So when I was asking like about BlackRock and Vanguard, it also seems like they're aligned with that, whether that's what they preach or not, but their actions seem to be.
Well, just the name itself, BlackRock, is
Mhm.
Masonic, and that makes me think of that giant black rock at the top of the UN
Mm-hmm.
in the meditation room that they pray in it with a black rock.
Right.
And the black cube is like Saturn. I mean, I don't know how far down that weird path you want to go, but they worship a cube.
They worship Q.
Islam does the processions around the black cube.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mecca.
Oh, Mecca. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. I never thought about it that way though. That it's a black cube.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So
Magical meteor.
magical
They
music.
kiss.
They do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know this.
It's just pretty weird.
And Saturn, that's like the pagan
Yeah,
worship.
Saturn's a human sacrifice deity.
Right.
He's Father Time,
Yeah,
or
Kronos.
the
Kronos.
Grim Reaper.
Kronos.
Kronos. Yeah.
Kronos.
That's Saturn. He's represented always by a cube, a black cube.
Okay. All right. Well, so not a, like, happy place for kids. Again, yeah.
No. Well, now it's coming out that Disney has a PEDO problem. I'm not Walt himself, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I wanted to get into that because one of the things that I think is making people, wake up to anything about Disney is, all the promoting, not just the wokeism, but the trans stuff. And so what's going on there? Why?
So this whole place is a magnet for creepers, and many of them actually work for the company. The director of music publishing at Disney, named John Healy, was arrested on 3 counts of lewd acts and abusing underage girls. Disney VIP Michael Laney was convicted of sexually abusing a 7-year-old. Former child star Ricky Garcia filed a complaint against Joby Hart for allegedly raping him throughout his adolescence. I mean, I have a whole list of Disney people who get in trouble for this, and they hired them back. At least 35 Disney employees have been accused of sex crimes involving children since 2006. There was a scandal involving Walt and Bobby Driscoll, who was the voice of Peter Pan back in the day. You probably heard of Victor Salva.
Mm-hmm.
A former child care worker was sentenced to 3 years for molesting a 12-year-old boy who acted in 2 of his films. Disney hired Salva after he was released to make the movie Powder in 1995. And then you have the whole facts that Disney is a big producer of PORN through Miramax and other subsidiaries that are used to make super cash in the PORN industry since the early 90s.
Wow.
So all of your pay-per-view prawn,
Right.
Was owned by some subsidiary?
yeah.
Huh. Miramax, or it's Miramax subsidiary. I knew Disney owned Miramax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it trickles down from there.
I see what you're saying.
Parent company
Right, right.
is
Of a parent
producing
company. Parent company.
Snow White and Snow White Triple X. So
Well, that would explain all the Halloween costumes.
yeah. Oh, and then this is so weird. So can you Jeff Stein,
Yeah.
that guy?
Yeah.
Everyone knows that guy.
Yeah,
now,
that guy,
right?
yeah.
You're on the wrong one, so.
Well,
Yeah.
we're also on YouTube though.
Yeah.
aren't we?
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
So,
But
Little St. James, aka Jeff Stein Island, is off the coast of St. Thomas, which is a port of call on the Caribbean cruise. So, they're neighbors. They're literally like one's here and one's here. Okay. One excursion called Captain Nautica's Snorkeling Expedition takes you to Little St. James.
Okay.
Okay, so they're taking kids snorkeling at Jeff Fry Poophead Island as a excursion on their Caribbean cruise line. Other excursions are called Butterfly Anytime and Butterfly Secrets. So anybody who knows about the Monarch program knows that the butterfly is sus whenever you see it in these contexts.
We say that
The
again?
monarch butterfly.
Yeah.
Butterfly symbolism.
Yeah,
Is suspicious in these contexts. So 2 of their excursions are called Butterfly Anytime and Butterfly Secrets. So if that doesn't sound like a creeper
Yeah.
excursion. So then the Mirror organized a Disney day out for the kids at Longleat House in Wiltshire, where GMAX, that lady,
Mm-hmm.
presented a check for the Save the Children's Fund. So you can go online and you can find a picture of Mickey and Donald and everybody on a big stage at Longleat House with G herself working with these Disney characters. And that was in 1985.
1985.
So then, what else? ABC News anchor Amy Robach was caught on hidden camera admitting that the network had so ABC is owned by Disney.
Oh, no. Okay, wait. Hold on. They're not here. No, because they're not hearing them. Yeah, but they're not hearing them. The mics. Well, that's fine, but if the audience isn't hearing us. Okay, well, I'll just put my mic here, so.
Oh, okay. So
And I don't think we're on rock then, by the way.
You got a $20 tip.
Oh, okay. All right. Great, thank you.
So just talking to this one now? Then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just something.
So ABC is owned by Disney,
Okay.
Right.
Right, yes.
which Disney owns so much more stuff now than even when I started writing these books. Star Wars franchise, Fox, what else?
Well, not Fox
Marvel.
News, but what do you mean? The 20th Century Fox?
Yeah, like all of this
Not
is getting...
Fox News. That's.
No. Yeah, 20th Century Fox, Marvel, and all of these things. So, before the whole Jeff Stein stuff came out, there was a news anchor that worked for ABC, and she admitted that the network had the story for at least 3 years before it broke, and evidence against Prince Andrew and the Clintons at the same time, so they are covering up for these people at ABC.
That is very interesting because I have definitely heard some stuff with ABC that was, definitely seemed like it was very connected to some, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but definitely some kind of occult.
She's a famous journalist. You know what we're talking about.
I don't
She was a
think so.
famous journalist who said that I had the whole story for years,
Mhm.
and I was told by my corporate elites not to. I can't do it.
Wow.
I'll send you that later.
Yeah, I'd love to see that because I've heard stuff from people who worked with them that was definitely connected to some dark magic type
Yeah.
stuff.
So then Disney chairman Richard Cook took trips on Lolita Express in 2002 and then became the chairman. After that, a senator, Democrat from Maine, G. Mitchell, was accused in this case, and he was also the chairman of the Walt Disney Company from 2004 to 2007.
Wow.
And this is the weirdest last fact I have on this. Between 2000 and 2014, 200 passengers went missing from cruise ships.
How many?
200.
Wow. From one cruise ship,
No, just
just in general.
from
cruise ship.
in this 14-year period.
Mhm.
So what is happening over there in the Caribbean? Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
Kind of real pirates.
But Pirates of the
Demon
Caribbean.
pirates.
Yeah.
Very dark.
It's so crazy. There's just more if you want to keep
Yeah,
going.
no, I want to keep going. I also want to talk a little bit about just the whole, like, we've covered some of the children, PRN, but then this whole trans thing, which I think does come from a very, like, I think that's all connected to, like, the AI and the, transgender to transhuman. And I think it does have roots in kind of, like you were saying, Gnostic, Luciferian, even, pagan worldviews. So I'd love if you could expound on that. And what's going on, and what you think Disney's role in that is
Disney
as
has
well.
a role in transhumanism.
Through animism, transhumans definitely, because they're Star Wars and becoming part man, part machine, animatronics. And I think the LGB stuff is the path to transhumanism, body mod, changing genders. It's not going to be very much farther until people want to be half animal, half person, or half robot, half person, right?
Right.
So this year, some of the big news stories coming out of Disneyland is the Parental Rights and Education Bill in Florida, which the LGBTQ employees of Disney World strike to get the company involved, and the radical activists are the ones who started calling it the Don't Say GAY bill. So the execs were kind of like not interested in this until a lot of these employees made a huge stink and protest and signs and the whole shebang, and they got them involved. And so this kind of besmirched Disney a little bit to the public, even more so, right? And so tides were turning, their stock went down, and they were like 60% of Disney customers did not appreciate Disney's involvement in fighting this parental rights bill. So now DeSantis is trying to get their special tax status and other privileges repealed, like we were talking about before, like they're a city-state.
Yeah.
So he's trying to overturn all that right now. One of their, so they used to have these big standards about like quality in their customer service and stuff, and they had these keys. They had 4 keys of the greatest customer service in the world, and now they have included the 5th key of inclusion, but this is for the LGBTQ, and they have to follow the rules of inclusion or else, but it still discriminates against people who are unstabbed and Christians.
So, and what's the discrimination against them? That they cannot enter, that they...
Yeah, like, so they're trying to get it that you have to have that to
in order to
go into the park.
participate.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's very Orwellian, like this whole diversity conformity, like you have to conform to be diverse, and you have to be diverse to conform.
It was also one of the first places to utilize the Pentagon and DARPA's biometrics program. So Disney in the early 2000s started with you have to biometrically scan to get into the park. That was before any other place had done it. And that was a specific Pentagon program to test out biometric scanning for everybody that comes to Disneyland. It's still there. You still have to scan your biometrics.
If you go to Epcot or one of those, if you go to Epcot or one of the big parks, I think we went in like 2008 or 9, and it was right after they had implemented the thumbprint. So you go to purchase your ticket, you give them your credit card, and then to get in the gate, you got to give them your thumbprint and your ticket, and then you walk on that big ball, the Siemens Spaceship Earth it's called, and they take your picture right away, and then they can figure out like where you're from, because you have to tell them like I'm from Texas or I'm from Kansas or whatever. And so they basically recorded all of your biometrics within 30 minutes of entering the park, and they have your address and everything on file from your credit card, so they know. And if you get a fast pass, then they know who is exactly on what ride at what time.
So, do you think they're using this as a beta test? Was it an ancillary beta test, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is a giant series of experiments, mind control. But I mean, the park itself is a surveillance, experiment, mind control, all of it.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, when you're looking up above, and what
Mhm.
you would see a bunch of little kids with mouse
Yeah.
heads on, running around like it's mice in the lab of the scientists.
Right, right. In the little maze, which
Yes,
is
exactly.
yeah.
We are the science experiment, and you put on your little ears to prove it, and you just run around their little rat maze.
That's terrible. Yeah,
And you
it's
eat their GMO food, and you're trapped in the walls of this theme park. And we were making this point last night. It's such a microcosm, macrocosm, because when you enter the
Yeah.
park, you can't bring your own food and drinks, so you have to buy what's there.
yeah.
And you can't leave very easily because you have to go through the rigmarole of getting a hand stamp or whatever, and it's like such a hassle to get out and in. So you're stuck there all day. And America's kind of like that too, because with all of the illusion of choice with our corporations,
Yes.
like McDonald's, it's Arby's, Burger King, Taco Bell, KFC. You're stuck in the theme park of America, and you can't get out, and your choices are so limited.
Right.
Right.
But you have this, like you said, the illusion of choice. You have
Yeah.
the illusion that, I think that's one of the things that's so frustrating, because Americans feel like they're so free, and it's one of the things they brag about, right? And if anything, having that illusion has in many ways hindered any kind of resistance, any kind of desire to advocate for real freedom,
Yeah.
because they're blinded by this illusion of having.
Well, just vote for the other guy.
Yeah, just vote harder.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I'm curious about these, like, this seems like it is the beta test for these 15-minute cities. So what will it look like? Will they start rolling out? I mean, they've started rolling out these 15-minute cities already, all over the country. And surprisingly, I think to a lot of people, in very, what they think are like red states, and right? And some of those I think have the most egregious, actually, with all the surveillance cameras and the blue light cameras. So what do you think they're going to take from this and execute throughout?
Well, one thing I want to say about the 15-minute cities is, I'm no World War II scholar, but wasn't it how ghettos were created in Berlin before the war? Like, Hitler wanted to keep the Jews in one borough,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yep.
he created 15-minute cities where you can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how ghettos were created, and that's how this whole thing started. So, like, to me, these 15-minute cities just sound exactly like these ghettos.
Yeah, which led
Right.
to concentration camps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the convenience. But I think the thing that's what I notice is that with Disney, it's very enticing, right? It's this is the magical land, and it's fun, and I always say that what they do, and I think this is kind of a Luciferian model where you have to opt in, and then you're trapped, right? So it's one of the examples I typically use is I talk about like Facebook versus LifeLog, and I can't say with certitude that Facebook replaced LifeLog, but certainly we do know LifeLog was a DARPA program that got taken down February 4th, 2004. Facebook went up February 4th, 2004. And what's the big difference between the two is that they deemed that LifeLog was unconstitutional. It's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, right? And so, but Facebook kind of does the same thing, but you choose, you opt in. And this is one of the arguments I keep making about like the UBI. They're going to make it really enticing, and that will roll out with the CBDCs, but people are going to say, oh, because the economy is collapsing, and so we need it. And I feel like with Disney, this is a similar kind of thing where they've made it really fun. It's really cool. It's we'll give over all our biometric data because it's so convenient, and it's got everything I need. And so my concern is that that's what they're taking. And now they're trying, I'm already seeing these commercials where they're, and the propaganda in general, just where they're trying to convince you that why wouldn't you want a 15-minute city? I mean, you don't have to go anywhere outside of this. Everything you need is right within your, right at your fingertips. And essentially you're in your own prison, but you've chosen to be.
Well, he talks a lot about you'll live in a corporate city, like you'll live in Target Town or Walmartville or Costco.
I think you'll live in Harry Potter world or Star Wars world. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I think that as these conglomerations, continue to combine, you'll have entire regions where, you'll live in your theme park.
I played this TikTok video on my show last night, and it was the day in the life of a girl who had just bought a condo in Disney World. So apparently, I guess you can get real estate now in the Disney World. And she's like, first stop today, we're going to Starbucks, and I get my dog a puppuccino, and then we go to Target so I can pick up some new furniture for my house, and then, and Ulta is inside Target now. That makes me so happy. And then I think she goes to Target 2 or 3 times, and then for dinner they get Domino's Pizza, and the next day they get Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm just like, every corporation that you just listed off is disgusting.
Yeah.
For food, for one, and their morals, all of them are on the front lines of this wokeism. Starbucks, Target, Ulta. They just had this scandal where they hired all of these men to be their spokespeople for makeup, and they lost a bunch of stock from that. I don't shop at Ulta anymore because of that.
Sure.
But it was just crazy to see her whole life revolves around these corporations, and they've got this stranglehold on her.
Yeah.
And I see in the culture, like, every woman's dream is to just go to Starbucks and Target every day.
That's the dream?
Yeah. Target
Yeah.
super sucks. Yeah.
And Starbucks is awful.
Starbucks
I mean,
coffee's always
it's
gross.
gross. They
But-
burn their beans.
These places are replacing church and safe places like your family home or whatever as their places where they go for comfort. Like, it was almost as if she had been to church. That's how relieved she felt.
Right.
After visiting Target for the second time that day. It's really crazy.
For the second time that day?
Oh, yeah.
What is there in Target that's worth going 2 times in a day? Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
So what do you think they're gonna do next?
Okay,
Yeah, let's go back.
Let's talk about aliens for a second.
Okay.
I bet you don't think of Disneyland when you think of aliens, but I never thought I'd see the day where the NBC Nightly News was weirder than my own feed on Reddit because they just announced that there's a mothership hovering somewhere. They said Pentagon is afraid that a mothership
Yeah, I
is...
put that on my Twitter. The NBC News is saying that there's an alien mothership possibly out there, pushing the alien psyop.
Right.
That was 2 nights ago, NBC News, not conspiracy.com. NBC News.
Right.
No, and it's so fake. And so, in January 1995, Walt Disney World hosted this UFO convention, and this 2-week conference on the ET and UFO phenomenon features scientists, authors, and former military. So this was a private conference at Walt Disney World with all of top military scientists and UFO phenomenon researchers. Okay? And it was not advertised to the public, so this was all in preparation for the new ride in Tomorrowland called Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
So this ride was based on Ridley Scott's Alien franchise, which don't you think that would make a perfect ride for children?
Oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's like all of those. So the thing about the Disney movies is, and my mom, my sister, and I talk about this all the time. Like these movies that are targeting children, and they always have some like sorcerer or witch character or like a warlock, or somebody really scary that gives kids nightmares. And I mean, I know most kids I know have nightmares about all of these fairy tales. It's supposed to be like happy fairy tale, but it's so dark.
Yeah, so this ride actually closed after 2 years because it was too scary. And they toned it down even twice. They were doing beta tests, and the kids would all come out crying like, ah. And so they're like, we'll tone it down, and it was just still too scary. But they made a documentary to go along with this ride as a promotion for it, and it is the craziest thing. So, like, I don't even know what it's called because it didn't air, but it was like a Sunday night family special that they made, but it didn't go. But you can find it like Lost Disney Alien documentary or something like that.
Okay.
So in it, they claim that intelligent beings are beckoning mankind to join the galactic community. Now that we have discovered nuclear power, we have caught the attention of the other ghoulies floating around, and now we are advanced enough to learn that we are not alone in the universe. Okay? So they referenced the federally funded 1960 Brookings Institute report that warned the public that the discovery of life in space might topple civilization if faced with a race of superior beings. So they weren't ready for this in the 60s,
Right.
but they are ready to topple it now with
yeah.
fake alien invasion, right?
Yeah, of course. They've done all the programming.
And
So
especially the past couple of years with all the so-called declassified alien files and blurry videos, which are all terrible. But it's been pushed heavily by mainstream media for big time in the last 3 years.
yeah.
We've done, I think, probably 15 podcasts on alien psyop in the last 5 years. So
What do you think the intention is? I know there's that very famous video with Reagan talking about how, right now what we need is like the alien invasion to get everybody to unify so that they realize we have a common enemy.
Yeah, and a space force. So they want
Mhm.
a space force, and they want humanity to unite under this false enemy.
Right.
Right.
I think people overlook the Disney role in that. We think about other Hollywood entities, but Disney has a huge role in that. And that's why I put in my first book an entire chapter on almost 80 pages on the promotion of the alien mythology. And now it's rolling out. So
Yeah. No.
So in this documentary, he says that Disney Imagineers have designed a way to prepare humans for their inevitable alien encounter, and he's talking about the ride. So it's just kind of funny, like these are terrifying beings that come and suck your brains out. And this is what Disney is preparing you for via the ride.
Right.
UFO alien encounters. But I mean, then you have the cartoon like Lilo and Stitch. That's an alien movie. What else?
Yeah.
Mars Needs Moms. That's a weird alien one from Disney.
Right.
Do you remember that movie?
I do. Yeah.
It's about like how they throw away the boy babies and make an army of girls.
Right. So kind of like the opposite of China.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's weird because the girl soldiers, like, it does have like an Asian flavor to it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of that movie Escape from Tomorrow?
I have. Yeah.
So I got notes on that if you want to talk about it.
Yeah,
'Cause it's
I definitely
pretty
do.
poignant, and he's got a chapter on it in his.
Mhm.
Which book is that in?
it's just on the website.
Oh, it's on the website.
Yeah.
But I'm quoting him. He said, "This is an occult-themed mind control operation targeting the nuclear family." So that's what Disney is.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I think now we see that much more. It's they target and especially with how they're so overtly coming out with all the things that are anti-nuclear family. But just the fact that they capture the kids. So now you have your kids who are captured, and they're going to be kind of blindly leading whatever, messaging.
And pay attention to their language too, because they say things like, "We're here to capture your imagination. We're imagineering the world into existence," and these are like the esoteric, hermetic things that they're dropping inside of the rides that most people it just goes right over their head. But if you know what you're listening to, you're like, "Holy crap!" They're telling us that they created everything.
One of the MK Ultra doctors that's lesser known is Dr. Gregory Bates, and he had a famous comment where he talked about one of the best ways to control man is to capture his imagination. I think that Disney played that role for the control and capturing of the American imagination.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. I'm curious, you were saying about the Space Force, so, a lot of people think that, Trump is going to be like the savior, and but he created the Space Force, right? What do you think the role of that is?
Honestly,
Either of
I
you?
don't believe in aliens from outer space.
Right.
I don't think we're going to be under attack from a mothership. I think if anything, it would be interdimensionally. You know, they're not going to cross the galaxy and then get shot down over Montana. Like, that sounds retarded. Right?
Yeah. Right.
So,
I think Space Force is just part of
What do you think?
the Air Force, is part of space comm. That's like the aerospace. So I don't think it has anything to do with going to other planets. People have all these, kind of fantastical speculations. I think it's just part of the surveillance defense apparatus, which is, basically trying to control the world.
Yeah.
Skynet, basically.
Right. Well, I also feel like, I mean, this is kind of how I feel about NASA, but I think it's, and, if you're familiar with Operation Paperclip, I feel like it's a big money laundering shell.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think Space Force would be as well.
there's a ride in Epcot, I think, called Mission to Mars.
Yeah, I've done it.
It's so realistic that
Well,
you...
it's realistic in terms of how it feels.
Yeah.
It looks like 90s CGI.
But I'm saying you could convince people that they had been to Mars in something like this. You know, Elon Musk, you spend $10 million to go to Mars, and you've probably just been on a Disney ride.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was talking to somebody about this the other day. They're like, well, Courtney, I mean, Mars is definitely real. I mean, Elon's doing trips there. And I was like, you're I know. I'm like, they do have, like, virtual reality, and you don't think they can't, like, they have holograms that feel, real. So
We haven't even been to the moon. We're not going to Mars.
yeah.
Grow up.
Yeah. Bursting all the bubbles,
Yeah. But so this movie, Escape from Tomorrow, is a 2013 independent film, and it's so interesting because they filmed inside Disney World, but they did not get...
Supposedly. To me, that seems implausible.
What?
There's cameras everywhere in Disney World, so.
Well, they didn't have permission to film in there.
I'm saying that's the story.
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
supposedly. I don't
So-
believe that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How can you film a movie in Disney World without? I mean, there's surveillance cameras everywhere. So what I'm saying is that they probably did have approval to make the movie. That's probably a marketing line. What I'm saying.
Yeah. I would agree.
So, well, this is about the nuclear family that's under attack. So there's a mom and a dad and a boy and a girl, right? And they are at their vacation in Disney World. And the opening scene is the dad's on the patio of the hotel, and he's just lost his job, but he can't admit this to his family because then they'd be sad on their vacation, right? So the boy comes up and locks him out on the patio and then crawls back in bed with the mom, and the dad can't get back in. And this is like setting the tone for the whole movie. And so he has to call the mom on the phone to let him back into the hotel room, and they go down, they go to the park, and you start to notice that this place, there's something sinister about it, and it makes the kids like rebellious and bratty, and it makes the dad like lusty, it makes the mom bitchy. So they're going through this like psychological change from being at the park, right? So they're riding into the park, and the dad and the son see these like sexy teens on the ride into the park, and they're not even teens; they're like preteens.
Okay.
So this is some kind of commentary on inappropriateness of the Disney milieu. I mean, one of the girls has braces. They're the nymphs or the sirens or the of the movie.
Right.
So the dad's drooling over these girls, and the son is looking at them too, and so there's this weird, like, dual... What?
I don't know
Just,
what word you're looking for. What?
They both have the same problem, right, that the Disney World is bringing out of them. So...
Well, one thing that comes up later in the film is that it's a manipulation of your base desires. There's a lot of Freudian elements in this film. So, when the dad's in the mind control machine, he's seeing, butts and sexy women and stuff because it's manipulating your desires.
So throughout the day, the dad is trying to manipulate what the family is doing by following these girls around. Like if he sees the girls going on some ride, then he says, "Oh, let's go on this ride," because he just wants to keep creeping on these girls, right? So
I just want to say that, and I don't know if it's accurate, but Because you were saying that Disney was was working with B'nai B'rith.
Mm-hmm.
And I was recently reading that Freud was a member of B'nai B'rith in Austria.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's just interesting.
Yeah. So it gets weirder in the park. So he, like, one of the girls falls down and scrapes her leg, so he has to take her to the little Disney nurse. And there's something going on, like a pandemic. Because, like, throughout the movie, everyone's coughing around them. And the nurse says, are you having flu-like symptoms? And the dad's like, no. And she's like, well, there's this cat flu going around.
Blue light symptoms.
Flu-like.
Oh, flu. Okay.
Yeah, flu-like symptoms.
Okay.
Throughout the day, it just keeps getting weirder. So then he runs into this lady who's like a witchy single mom, and she hypnotizes him, and he wakes up and they're like having sex in a hotel room. And she tells him that the Disney princesses are just high-priced courtesans.
Wow.
And that did come out with the Jeff Stein stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That some of the code names for the people they were ordering, like I want Cinderella or I want Ariel. Did you see that?
I did see that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
That's so disturbing.
Yeah. So then, the mom starts catching on to the evilness of the park, and she sees the girls that they've been following all day, or the dad has been trying to follow all day. Mm-hmm. And one of their faces looks very, like, demonic.
Right.
Right? And then there's a scene where the dad gets taken down into an underground base underneath Epcot, and they said that Siemens has been doing these mind control experiments since you were a kid, and you were part of this since you came to the park when you were young. So they've been following him throughout his life. And whenever he visits the park, it's just a very weird sci-fi type movie.
Right.
But it has all of these little Easter eggs in it, like the scientist is an android, the mind control scientist, when he finally like escapes from his underground holding, and he kills the scientist. It's actually a robot. So you just have to watch it, because there's a scene where the weird lady, you come to find out she's an aged out Disney princess with mental problems, who dresses her son in princess dress.
Just as her son.
So yeah, so they're like alluding to like high-priced courtesans and child TRAFF and cross-dressing and all this like mind control stuff. Mm-hmm. So I recommend it. It was a really interesting movie, because when he's in the mind control experiment pod, the images in the chamber give the impression that his mind control is through sex, right? And then he actually ends up dying at the end in the hotel room, and he's a sort of ritual sacrifice. And then when the hazmat crew he dies of the cat flu, and the hazmat crew comes to clean it up, and they take the dad away, and they work for Disney, they're the Disney cleanup crew, right? Mm-hmm. And throughout the whole movie, the son has been trying to get on the Buzz Lightyear ride, and he could never get on it. And the hazmat guy taps him on the forehead and gives him a false memory, and takes away the memory of his dad dying, and replaces it with the memory of him going on Buzz Lightyear. So it's really weird.
So it's mind control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's a really strange Disney movie.
Yes.
Well, it's not technically a Disney.
No, it's not. It's a movie about Disney.
It's about Disney.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think that? Do you think they're trying to hearken to what Disney really is, or do you think?
I think so. I definitely think those people who wrote that had been listening to a lot of conspiracy theories about Disney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to check that one out too. Interesting. So what do you think will happen next? Like, where do you think the plans are? Because they've gone pretty far, and just when you think that they can't go any further, they do. So Disney is pretty, and they've also really lost a lot of. They've lost a lot of stock. A lot of people have boycotted them. So, where do you think they're going to go from here?
Maybe
they'll go out of business.
DR.
I don't know.
That would be great, but
DRAG shows on Main Street Disneyland.
Are they doing that?
Maybe. She's saying maybe what are they going to do? And I'm like, well, that's the logical next step.
Right.
I mean, even the character of Ursula in Little Mermaid was based on a famous DRAG queen.
That's right.
Yeah,
I
you
forgot
can
about
totally
that.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just exactly what Ursula looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like oftentimes you would think that they would pull back, so they don't go out of business, but they do the opposite. They they run even further, and they go to kind of the end, and then double down so that.
Well, they just got caught. You saw that where they leaked their Zoom calls to each other. Do you remember that?
I don't
Yeah, that's where they were saying
So
ramp up the trans and gay.
yeah,
For,
so
for kids.
Disney president of entertainment Carrie Burke was the mother of 2 queer children and 1 transgender, and the other was pansexual. She thinks they don't have enough gay leads. She announced 50% of all Disney characters will be LGBTQIA in the future.
This is what led to the boycotting and
Right,
the collapse
right,
in
yeah.
stock was this
Yeah.
Zoom call.
And then another producer got caught on the Zoom call, LaToya Raveno, producer of Puppy Pals, Super Monsters, Rise Up, and Sing Out, saying she adds queerness wherever she can and nobody stops her.
What is so we talked a little bit about it, but where is the connection between this whole transgender to AI, that merging? Like, what do you think that's all about? Your thoughts on that?
Where is the merger between?
Why are they pushing it? Why do they push the transgender so hard? And why, how does that lead us to the transhuman and the AI?
Because if you can get people to deny fundamental reality, they'll do anything. So I see it as an extreme form of mind control. If you look at the trans agenda, that was largely championed by Tavistock. Tavistock is,
The one time people finally knew about them, because there was all that backlash and they had that lawsuit. Yeah, because usually they're kind of like a shadow operation.
right, and they're the origins basically of all psychological warfare studies out of World War I, shell shock, and then that leads into mind control, Rockefeller grant for all the Tavistock stuff. So so they're a big part of this in terms of getting people. It's just mind control to get them to fall into line with the overall agenda of the technocracy, which is to rewrite humanity, post-humanism. That's the end goal. That's all of everything is about that.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And trying to make it so that nobody can have children the natural way anymore.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on? I mean, this isn't really necessarily Disney, but I am curious. Both of your thoughts on this. There is this major push for all this artificial kind of creation of life, right? The ecto-life pods, where they call them babies when they're in the ecto-life pod womb, quote unquote womb, because it's not really a womb, right? It's a synthetic encasement. But then they're babies, whereas if they're in the mother's womb, it's a glob of fetal tissue. That's right. Yeah, and then there's, of course, there's a lot of promotion of the trans using surrogates or donors, and so I'm just curious your thoughts on all of that, because on the one hand there is kind of this Depop agenda, but then when it comes to some of this synthetic or unnatural promulgation or procreation of life, they're really pushing very hard.
Right, so I think that they're not at the point where they want to destroy all human beings, and human beings still serve a function, and that's covered in Brave New World, where you have the humans that are born via the hatcheries, and they want to be able to. So in other words, they need several more generations of experimentation to get to the point where humanity can be overcome and perfected for transhumanist immortality. So they're not at the stage where they want to totally get rid of all the humans right now. Depopulation means depopulation of humanity the way it has been, and population in terms of how it's going to be with what the elite determine.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I just thought about this little Disney short about family planning that you can look up, and it was
Good point. I'm glad you remember that.
it had this little Mexican family, and they're like, don't have too many kids or you'll be poor, and they were trying to eradicate, like...
Well, it's part of eugenics. I mean, Disney was
Right.
pushing eugenics.
But
so.
it was pretty racist, too, because they
Sure.
were saying, like, the Mexicans have too many kids, and they're like, we don't want black people to have too many kids, so, like, let's limit these to, you know, 1 or 2 kids so that... Yeah, there you go.
Ooh.
What's it called?
Family planning. Disney family planning.
Yeah. So look up that one.
Okay. Disney family planning.
Mm-hmm.
And was Disney connected to the eugenics movement in any direct kind of way? I mean,
Small World.
yeah. Right. Right.
UNESCO.
Yes.
So,
UNESCO for sure.
There you go.
Yes, for sure.
We went on this ride, the Chiquita Banana Ride, and it was all about like hydroponics and
It's
GMO
Monsanto's
food.
ride. It's
Yeah.
GMO. That's
Right.
what I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. The GMOs. Yeah, that's definitely. Well, yeah. This is soft. Do you have any other things you want to guide us through? I'm wondering. I don't know. I'm going to look through just to see if there are anybody in the chat who wants to ask questions. To welcome them. Let me see how.
Do we have super chats or anything?
We don't.
Okay.
I need to figure out how to do that. I am
Okay.
just learning how to do all this live stream stuff. So that would be awesome, but I don't know. Okay. The volume question. Yeah, so we have a bunch of people watching, but yeah, guys, if you're watching and you want to ask any questions, we are here. Let's see, how do I get this on? Yeah, it's not. All right, I'm gonna look on my phone since I'm a Luddite. Can't figure it out.
Well, real fast while you're doing
Yeah.
that, we can just go over this show that is an FX show that you can get on Disney Plus. So it's not necessarily a
Can you hear
Disney.
Mike?
In this mic or that one?
No, the mic's working.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
the sound's working now.
If you're not careful and watching exactly what all your kids are watching on Disney Plus, they might come across this show called Little Demon 2022. And it is about a cartoon about the Antichrist. So the opening scene is a pregnant witch was going to unalive her baby as soon as it was born, but it was born a girl, so she decides that she can keep it. And basically, the mom had a baby with the devil, and this is this teenage girl who has to go to high school, and she has not yet found out that her dad is Satan. This is a cartoon on Disney Plus.
Wow.
So the mom's dropping the girl off for school, and I mean, this is within the first 5 minutes. Mom tries to feel her breasts, what she calls her rosebuds, to see if they're tender and if she's getting her menstrual cycle yet. And so the girl goes into the school. She feels invisible, that whole trope, you know, like.
Right.
She gets her period at school, which is a very witchy thing to do. And the bullies come in and they call her Bloody Mary, and she has this psychotic break from embarrassment, and this is where her demonic powers are born. She has this like possession. She turns into a Carrie, like, you know, Stephen King's Carrie, kind of, or like the Hulk, or a combination of those, and she kills her bullies. So her period has summoned her father, Satan, and the mom has been using magic this whole time to keep her away from her dad. So it's a story that you can identify with if you're a child of divorce, right?
Right.
In some ways, but it's all about, you know, Lucifer and magic and everything. And the Satan character is played by Danny DeVito. So Satan the dad, he comes in different incarnations, and he lives in the metaphysical realm, he says, which he calls the port authority of the universe, which is like the crossroads, you know, where the devil lives, right? He doesn't live in hell, he lives in the metaphysical universe. At one point, the mom has to get naked and do a ritual to go into the metaphysical universe to get her daughter back from her dad's house. And she is like super muscular with all of these occult tattoos. You can see full frontal cartoon nudity. But the mom is more of a Baphomet character because she's got the masculine, muscular body, but also breasts. I mean, it's got everything in there.
Right. And it's called Little Demon.
It's called Little Demon. And the point of the show is that the dad, Satan, wants to merge the realms of Earth and his metaphysical universe, and he needs his daughter, the female Antichrist, to do it.
Whoa.
Yikes.
Right after you said Antichrist.
I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but the thunder was really, really loud right when she said that.
I know.
Yeah, that was creepy.
So I was just kind of like blown away that this is a cartoon for one, and that you can
Yeah.
get it on Disney Plus, and like if it's rated R or whatever, it's an FX show, but you know, if you're not being super vigilant about what the kids are watching.
Yeah, so it is rated R.
Well, I don't know if it has a rating.
Okay.
But like,
But it is a cartoon, so it's geared towards children,
Yeah.
and yeah, but again, not quite what you would think. One thing I wanted to ask, when you were talking about like I remember this when you were talking about like the Mickey Mouse Club and the Disney kids. There's the Nickelodeon kids also.
mhm.
Yeah, what's the connection there? Is there and
So just the name Nickelodeon, I write about this, I think, in this book right here.
okay.
Where is it? Nick, right? Before cameras, they had Nickelodeons, which were basically just old-timey peep shows.
Okay.
And these were like low-class, scummy things that you would find on a boardwalk or something like that, where you put your
Okay.
nickel in,
Yep.
you see a dancing lady.
Mhm.
Okay. And in the very beginnings of Hollywood and the inventions of the cameras, they were using them for PORN, and it gave the whole industry a bad reputation,
Mhm.
and that's why they had to move it from New Jersey to California, and also because of the sunlight. So because, the West Coast gets way more sunny days than the East Coast,
Sure.
and that's how the cameras would work. But so even the word Nickelodeon was, a old-timey peep show, and now it's famous for dropping goo on children.
Yeah, the slime,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, the green slime.
Yeah.
And they used to sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They used to sell this like little like Play-Doh, only it was green slime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think all of this is PEDO stuff
Mhm.
secretly.
Yeah.
And even Nickelodeon employees have a bad reputation, just like that card I read about all the Disney employees that have scandals. I mean, Nickelodeon also.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I would say Disney and Nickelodeon are both
Or
of the
that circle.
same.
Do you think that that is just part of their weird kind of a perversion, or do you think that, or both, I guess is the question, or do you think that it's part of a leverage for blackmail?
Both.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at the very top of the pyramid, or the bottom of the goo, or whatever, the loam,
Right.
it's controlled by principalities and powers and demons and the
Mhm.
devil that controls all them. And what they want to do is hurt God, and the easiest way to hurt God is to hurt children.
Right.
Right.
Right. And this would be how they do that.
So yeah, they're literally at war with God, and that makes children the prime target.
Right. So what would you advise people to do? Because I think a lot of parents feel, and this is just like kind of like a practical question. I think a lot of parents, one, don't want to see this stuff. Disney is just a happy place, and they don't want to be informed of this at all. But some, I think, are, especially now, it's really hard to avoid it. So, but what I hear from a lot of parents is, well, all their friends are, watching Disney, going to Disneyland, Disney World, and, that's, they go to the cruises, they go on vacation, and I think they feel like their kid is going to be left out, and it's kind of unavoidable.
Mhm.
So
It's brain control. It's toxic.
Mhm.
So it's worth being an outsider
Mhm.
rather than having yourself ruined. So
Yeah.
I think individual Disney movies if you watch them and you pre-approve I'm not gonna say Mary Poppins is the evil movie or
It's the cartoons and all that stuff today, not old stuff.
Yeah. But even in the old stuff, like Bambi has
Some propaganda
that will
anti-hunting.
become,
You're not supposed to hunt. Yeah.
but would also become like what is now like climate change and stuff like that. So paganism,
environmental message.
Yes. That was what Rescuers Down Under was about too. What was your question? What do you do? You just have to be super comb through it, what's an innocent Disney movie that I can think of?
I don't know if there are any.
Fox and the Hound.
Yeah.
But some of them are super traumatic, like Old Yeller. Is that for kids? I don't know. That's kind of
honestly, even Snow White was pretty traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah.
I haven't seen it in so long. I don't remember how it. But I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it was dark. So I don't know. Even Cinderella, I think has. Yeah.
Well, one of the overarching things, and I write about this too, is how they portray women in their phases. And so, like, for lack of a better way of explaining it, you have your maiden, your mother, and your crone phases in your life. Mm-hmm. And the Disney movie is focused on the women only in their maiden, and in their motherhood role, they're usually dead. Like, why don't all the princesses have mothers? And why do they always kill the mom in a Disney movie?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, they do.
So they're removing that phase of a woman's life. And then if they have an older woman in the, like, matriarch role, she's an evil witch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Or she's like a fairy or something that's not real.
Yes.
Right? So there's one psychological something that it does to
it's
kids.
Programming for sure.
I write about princess programming in this book actually, and how in the 2000s they really ramped up this whole like Disney princess as its own thing.
Yes, they did.
Right?
Yes.
And this really led to a lot of narcissism in girls.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of materialism, a lot of bolstering the economy through acting like an entitled brat and making your male counterpart like either go to war or get a job. I mean, not like you shouldn't have a job or whatever, but like bring me all of these things that a princess.
Well, I was going to say, I think it also really added to, I mean, not that relationships aren't like incredibly dysfunctional and increasingly so, but I think it made it really hard for a man to live up to any kind of, right? Because she has this expectation of that Prince Charming, right? That's what her mate is supposed to be. He's supposed to be Prince Charming that rides in on this white shining horse and, comes and rescues her. And then it's also very, I mean, for the woman, like, she's never going to be satisfied, right? So I think
it's a very shallow way of thinking about royalty and sovereignty and having, like, dignity.
Yeah.
It's a really weird spin on what, like, nobility is supposed to act like.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what do you think the purpose behind that was?
I just did this analysis of this movie called Princess Protection Program.
Okay.
And it has Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez in it.
Okay.
It was a Disney Channel movie when they were real young teen girls. But so the story was Demi Lovato's a princess of this like fictional country called Costa Luna. And it's under siege, and so she has to be put in the witness protection program and become an American teen. And so she has to unlearn all of her regal ways just to become like a normal girl.
Okay.
But I really kind of liked how they portrayed what a princess was in that movie, because it was just about like not conforming and not lowering yourself, being able to say no to things, because that's what sovereignty and what's the word? anyway,
Yeah.
it's being able to say no when to like a stab or
Right. That's,
Yeah.
free will.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and what movie was this?
It's called Princess Protection Program.
Okay, and it's like an independent kind of?
No,
Or?
it was a Disney
It's a
Channel.
Disney
Oh,
movie.
was it a Disney Channel movie?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. I mean, like in our religion, we believe that we are royalty in a way.
Mhm.
If God is the king of the universe and we are his children, then we're princes and queens and kings, and we should act like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, you do say no to things that are bad for you because you have this power behind you that doesn't influence you to put yourself under, Bill Gates or Fauci or this or that.
Right, cater to every whim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm noble and I'm sovereign and I'm going to have to say no to this.
Right. And so, what is it that what's the counterpart
Well,
that they're
the
promoting?
spin that they put on it is that it's all about, like, dressing up. It's the facade. It's just like how men try to be women.
Right.
So you try to be
Right,
royalty.
wearing
Magical
dresses.
thinking.
Right.
Yeah, you put on a pretty dress and now somehow you're a princess. It just doesn't work like that.
No. Yeah, it definitely doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Imagineering.
To conduct yourself with dignity, and you don't say yes to sex with every person, and you don't like do embarrassing things for attention, and it's just like a different mindset when you try and convince yourself that your father is a king.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. There would be a sense of dignity. I
Yeah.
think is
Mhm.
really the
You don't get an OnlyFans,
right.
if you're royalty. Like,
Well, yeah, you may be kicked out of the royal family if you do that.
yeah.
You would dishonor the whole entire.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't think we have any comments, but this was fascinating. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So we'll tell everybody where they can find I have both of their books here, and where can they find you? Where can they find your channel? Where can they find all your work?
I have a brand new show on YouTube called Out of This World, and you can find it by putting my name in there, Jamie Hanshaw, and I've been doing shows with Jay for 7 years on his channel, Dyer on YouTube, and Jay's Analysis is our website, right? He's got...
Yeah, we're on Rockfin too, so you can follow us on Rockfin. I have a Rumble channel now too, so I'm on Twitter, Instagram, all the sites, so you can just search me by my name.
Awesome.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.